So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting. This is the regular City Council and WPCA meeting. Today is Monday, August 2nd, 2021. Participating in the auditorium, I have Councilman Waldron, Councilwoman Wagner, Councilman Rubino, Councilwoman Ruette, and I believe I did hear from Councilman Oliver, who is ill, and I think Councilman Cavanero is on a bereavement. I know that it was his mother's funeral service this morning, so I didn't expect to see him here today. Before we begin the meeting, if we could all please stand and pledge the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So item number 1 on the agenda is public comment. I'll entertain a motion to open the meeting to the public in accordance with Section 4E of the City Council WPCA meeting rules of procedure.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ruette, seconded by Councilman Rubino. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're open to the public. Members from the public wishing to address the council? Mr. Ivey.
Good evening. I'm Steve Ivane, candidate for mayor, resident of Torrington. I'm before you today to discuss Waterways Incorporated development, and I only have questions. Reading up on this weekend, it's 155 units on 3 acres. How many people will that be? Where will they park? How can that comply with current zoning? 6 stories high. How does this comply with building height requirements? Is this really market rate housing? What is the track record of this developer building this type of residential development? Can this MOU be transferred to another developer? With what track record would another developer have? Are these developers only here searching for the town that gives them the largest tax giveaway? Tax abatements in the past were reserved for business developments that brought jobs. In this case, Torrington is giving up commercial industrial space, losing an economic development opportunity. Are we going to keep allowing investors to come in and put up this type of housing wherever there's a site cleanup? These opportunity zones are basically capital gain shelters for investors. Why are we only learning about this development immediately prior to the city council vote? I asked that the final plans be posted a week prior to the council meeting for final approval. Other similar housing of this size in Torrington has an estimated cost of $3.2 million just for education. That would be 133 students, $18,682 per student. 27 identified special ed being serviced in-house. Total cost, $504,000. 2 outplaced at a cost of $211,000. This does not consider the cost of other city services, fire and police, and the revenue with no tax payment is already in the negative. I implore you to get the facts and review all impacted costs that have not been spelled out. How can we possibly ask every citizen in the city to add hundreds to their already high tax bills to subsidize this project? We will be ahead financially by not developing this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ivane. Floor is still open to the public. Mr. Hayes.
Good evening, council members. I have some words on, Kevin Hayes, 101 Yale Avenue, Torrington. I originally had about 3 pages of long duration talking, but that's not me. But I do have some pictures for validation of my comments. If you'd like to see them, I'd be more than happy to distribute them. But it appears, and I also heard there's many questions around, excuse me, Mr. Couldn't I have everyone's attention, please? what I'm covering here, or questioning on, or trying to bring to your attention, is that some of the road work that is being done is not, always seems to be changed. We're going back and doing it again and doing it again. I don't know if it's by bad specifications, bad design, bad someone reviewing it. So whoever is doing that, there seems to be some poor quality control. So again, I don't know, it's by design, by review, or quality control. There seems to be, Highland Avenue was an issue. They had to redo the police department parking lot. The north end, there is a corner. You're texting, is it roulette?
Mr. Hayes, if you could just, I'm sorry, if you could just continue. You're on record, this is being
At the
recorded.
north end, there is a corner that is about 10 inches lower than the roadway. I'm talking this deep. That is a major problem because they're going to have to regrade the road, change its elevation, or change its pitch a great amount. The North End Fire Station has a hole in its blacktop already. It's 2 years old. And by appearance, which I have validation for the appearance, for pictures, it's an inch and a half thick. I went up to Maplewood Avenue. Again, I heard this. I needed to validate it. 10 gallons of water, 17 steps from the catch basin. I poured it. Didn't we get to the catch basin? Right across the roadway at a major intersection. Icing issue. Who is responsible for the quality control? And if we find out who's responsible for it, will there be corrective action taken? That's my question. Is there any corrective action taken on these projects that are always seem to have to be redone? That's truly my question. Is there any corrective action that can and will be taken to whoever is in charge of these programs? Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr.
And like I
Hayes.
said, if you'd like pictures for validation,
Yeah, if you leave them with the Assistant City Clerk, he can make sure that copies are handed and provided.
I think 6 or 8 each. So
Perfect,
you can
yeah.
distribute them later for validation. Thank you for your time.
Sure, no, thank you. The floor is still open to public comment. Mr. Capoletti.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Vincent Capoletti, 104 Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut. This is Build It and They Will Come. We have 2 projects we've done in the last 2 years in Torrington, 24 East, 34 East Main Street, and 104 Main Street. East Main Street is the retail tenants are building out their spaces now. And 104 Main Street, we're pretty much the last phase of, finishing our apartments, which are more than 50% rented now. People are starting to move in. Good news is that if you build it, they'll come. I'm here for the facade program, just to put a word in for the facade program, how important it is for this downtown development. A lot of the people that have been here a long time own these buildings. They either don't have the money to fix the buildings themselves, or they have the money and they don't see the return on their investment. The facade program always kickstart them to do something, coming up with a good portion of the money, city coming up with it, people coming up with a small portion. They'll have much more incentive to get them done. And if once you get 5, 6, 7 buildings done, it'll follow. The other people will come. The rents have to be higher, but you can't get higher rents when the place needs too much work. Tenants are not willing, and really most tenants do not have the money or the expertise to fix their own, fix up the buildings. So I think that this is very important to the city. I know you've had it before, and also with the signage, because you see what happens without a sign program, they put up banners, and you just have to get away from that. With the proper signage, with the proper facades, and then I think part of it goes to the interior, where a lot of these buildings are really substandard on their electric supply and their their bathrooms, handicap bathrooms. That's going to help them get this done so we can get a little, a tenant that could afford to spend more money on rent and, and perform a real business. And one of the things I pointed out to the mayor and economic development is on 26 East Main, or 34 East Main, all the program money was my money. And, I put it into the building, we put 4 apartments in and a retail. And in the first phase, they tripled my taxes. and I'm not going to fight my taxes because the taxes, when the building has no value, the taxes are low. I mean, when the building has value, then when you're collecting rents, the building has a different value. And all this facade money at some point will bring in tax revenues. If the building's worth more, the tax revenues go up. So it's very important to have this. I came from another city that had it, and it really jump-started the main street. And I think Main Street and water is very important to get that money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Capoletti. Still open to the public. Mr. Lipinski.
Hi, everyone at City Council, residents, Travis Lipinski, 102 Highfield Drive and 209 Torrington. I just wanted to say in support of Vinnie Capoletti's application for this facade grants and working with the city, and just wanted to express how important I think it is to work with the city, to work with his building on reflection. Sidebar, I'm also the real estate agent for the apartments, so we do have half of them rented so far. And I just wanted to say how important it is, I think, for the city to work with Vinnie together to see the investment that he's made on his building. I think there are a few other key downtown players to revitalization with their buildings, but I do think that Vinnie is one of the also newbie forefront investors on this. So I just wanted to say that I'm happy to be working with him, and on behalf of the city, I just ask for the support for this grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Floor is still open to the public. Fiona. Oh, Ray's beat you. Sorry. Go ahead, Ray.
Good evening.
Ray.
Ray Bruce, Torrington. I got a few things to say. Number one, nice job. Hotchkiss Brothers, Water Street. It's about time they did something with Water Street. I've heard other comments about the building, but sometimes you have to go above and beyond. I mean, what are you going to do with the building? Throw it down, break it down? What do you want to do with it? If it ain't going to go for housing, for units, for apartments, then what are you going to do with the building? The building's been sitting there for all this time. And back in the day, they made buildings to stay. I mean, I don't think a tornado or hurricane will take that building down. I mean, it's been there for years and years and years. And I think it's really structural, and it'd be a real shame if Torrington didn't take advantage of doing something with it on Water Street there. I mean, how many more years are we going to go by with just driving by that stupid building and looking at it and saying, what the heck is Torrington going to do with it? It's just really, to me, it's worth it to do with water's way he wants to do with it. I mean, to me, that's the best thing for it. And I want to thank the guy, Water's Way. Nice job for doing it. Let's go for it. Besides that, it's going to have some maybe underground parking, some storage lockers, and maybe even a pool. How about that? Isn't that cool? I mean, I might be the only dummy up here that talks like this, maybe the only dummy that thinks like this. But I mean, this is me, this is my mouth, this is the way I speak, this is the way I think. If people don't like it, I'm sorry, but I think we have to go forward with something with that building besides just looking at it and just letting it go for years and years. That's my thing. Also, number two, I want to get going because I only got 10 minutes here. Also, nice tour of the property you did, very good. That really took my conscience and made me think of what the city is going to do. And looking at it that way, I thought it was very nice. That was great. Number 3. Me too. I'm very excited to see the efforts and the grants for Main Street. Great job. Great job. Also, the car show Saturday, Sunday was excellent. This Friday is going to be another one for the fire department. I think, and I hope it does just as good as this one here did. The kids play. It was excellent. I think that's the best thing for the city of Torrington, that they came up with that. I mean, we have people come out of town to have parties there and use the facilities. I think it's a great thing. I just thought it was very good. The other thing is, I see a lot of cars in Torrington here with New York plates, out-of-town plates. I'm just curious about what's the city or who's involved or who's can be involved in checking on taxes. I mean, these people, they come here, okay, I understand this pandemic in New York, they want to leave New York, they come here, they buy some of these rundown houses, they fix them up, they do an excellent job, they rent them out, they sell them, whatever they do, but they must have a residence, they must have an address for Torrington. I think they should be paying their share of taxes on the vehicles too, like we do. I mean, I got a truck, a SUV, I got trailer, I got cookers, I got this and that. I pay my registration, I buy my insurance, pay my taxes on it. And there's no reason why these people I see in Torrington here with the New York plates and out-of-state plates that somebody should be checking in on this. I know it's with the pandemic, everything kind of slowed down and this and that, but still, it's something that should be looking into. And as far as the gentleman speaking about the roads, I agree with him on part of that. I go up and down East Main. There's a terrible manhole right there before you get to New Harrington Road. I try to veer to the right because I hit it every time, and I says, every time I come to New Harrington Road, I gotta move over to the right because that stupid manhole is gonna, and I got a new truck, so what's the sense of buying a new truck if it's gonna tear me up, you know? And same thing with Prospect Street and Litchfield Street. There's a few other streets, but I mean, they're doing all these side streets, which is nice too, but it'd be nice once they get the rest of them, because other cities do have pretty decent roads. I've been down to other areas of the country here, the city and the state, and there's a lot of roads that are nice, but we're working on it. I guess that's the name of the game. We're doing what we can, but it still needs to be a closer look at it and a more of a better job of repairing the gas company and the extra tamp and take an extra couple of minutes. I mean, don't worry about the city working for overtime because we got to get out of here at 3 o'clock because we know that we're going to hear all this rattle about it's overtime, it's too much money, the city, No, do the job, do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Budis. Still open to the public. Janice.
I got a little background.
City council members and public. My name is Janice Laporta. I was born and raised in Torrington all my life, but I do now live in Winsted. The reason I'm here, my entire family voted me to come talk, and it's about the Hotchkiss Mill redevelopment project. Thomas Minetto was my great-grandfather, and part of that redevelopment is the Thomas Minetto building. And our entire lives, we've, been, sad seeing it deteriorate. But I have one question, I think I read that just like the limestone around the windows is salvageable, but seems to me that a lot of that brick is, should be able to be used. It looks like it's like Mayor Carbone said, a fortress. So I'd like to, hope that somebody can answer the question why most of that building is not salvageable, most of it. And they want to recreate the facade, which is great. But, I just would like to see something wonderful come out of that building. And I have no qualms about what goes there, as long as it's something, wonderful for the city of Torrington. But I also hope that maybe a nice plaque or something with the mentioning, that what the building is for all of those buildings. There should be some type of plaques mentioned left there for everyone to understand what those buildings were and, the history of them. And that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you. Still open to the public. Fiona.
Good evening, Mayor Carbone and council members. My name is Fiona Capabianca, and I am here tonight regarding the possible MOU with Waterways, Inc. and Pager LLC. Several years ago, I came before the council in opposition of the proposed Penrose development due to the impact it would have to the schools. I was surprised to see, at the least on the agenda, a new proposal for an additional 155 unit affordable housing complex that includes 4-bedroom dorm-style units. Current zoning allows for 20 units per acre. On January 31st, 2011, the zoning was changed to allow incentive housing overlay zone. When reading the purpose of this zoning change, it would appear that we would have to have public transportation infrastructure to support this. It discussed sustaining a lifestyle in which residents can walk or use public transportation to reach jobs, services, and recreational or cultural opportunities. Its further purpose is to enable development and reuse of existing historic or underutilized buildings or projects. My question is, what jobs are they walking to if we are turning all of our downtown into affordable housing units, rather than workplaces for people to work? Will an investment be required to the public transportation system to support this? It states also that this requires a 30-year deed. Is that deed transferable? I always have concerns when it's LLCs that are proposing to develop a project. When the Penrose development was proposed, I outlined the impact this would have on the schools and the estimated costs associated with such a large concentration of people in such a small footprint. We are now considering 155 units on a 3.2 acre parcel with the potential in the MOU of a tax abatement. That tax abatement will cost the city over $1 million per year based on the estimated building size, lost revenue to all of us. If we use the comparison of Woodland Hills that has no 4-bedroom units, the cost per year for that 3.2 acre parcel of land is estimated as follows. 162 students total. Regular ed costs of $2,484,706. Special ed students that are serviced in the school system, $504,414. Outplaced students, $211,897. When we bring in our other current affordable housing complexes prior to Penrose arriving, we have a regular education student cost of $4,203,450. Outplaced student cost of $623,881.31. There is no other street or concentrated area in Torrington that has exceeding costs to that level. Will the City Council be considering a commitment, possibly an MOU with the Board of Education to fund the costs associated with this project, or will we be anticipated to absorb these costs within our existing budgets? I asked the council to consider not approving this MOU until a further cost analysis can be done on the real impact. Affordable housing impacts the whole community, sometimes negatively, as communal resources are stretched to more people, leaves fewer dollars left per person. This will become a liability to Torrington when the resources needed to support this project exceeds the amount of local taxes and federal subsidies coming in. We are the leader in affordable housing in Litchfield County. I feel very strongly we need to get our basis in the school system and our community as a whole. And it's time for some of the surrounding communities in Litchfield to help with this endeavor, not just Torrington. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Still open to the public. And just before additional public comment is made, this is not affordable housing. So go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name's Emmy Fedor. I'm a 24-year-old lifelong Torrington resident, and I'm also here to inquire tonight about the positive impact of the project that's planned for Water Street. I think it was mentioned before that the plan proposal was more recently made public, and so I think that before the council decides to make a decision, more information definitely needs to be available to the public as a whole. Into a few of my points and questions, but I'll be brief. I was granting a 20-year tax abatement for the project, and so as a financial analyst, the income to the town would be $0. I understand that there are planned opportunities for retail and restaurants, but have we, again, as Fiona had mentioned, really looked at the break-even analysis of what the income looks like for this project and how much we're losing in taxes every year? As more resources are stretched to more people, the fewer dollars that are available to every citizen in Torrington. Public housing can definitely benefit a town, but becomes a liability when the resources needed to support it exceed the amount of income coming in. So again, has a break-even analysis been done? Where is that point, and what can we expect in revenue for the town? How can there be any benefit when the tax income will be $0 for 20 years from that? I don't know.
Mayor's Committee on Youth. This is what we train the Mayor's Committee on Youth kids to do. So it is wonderful.
So again, I think there are definitely a lot of questions that I've heard tonight that are outstanding, and so if more information could be made available before the council decides to make a decision, I think it'd be greatly beneficial to the town. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emmy. We're still open to the public. George. Hey.
I just have one little short thing. My name is George Craig, Crow Boulevard. I believe we have a $3 million grant for sidewalks. I think it's on East Main Street. And I think the time is going to be, that's going to be running out soon. And I was just curious as to whether we were going to be doing something with that. You know, it is dangerous going up there, and I know there's a lot of problems with sidewalks. It would be nice if we used that $3 million to make it more a little amiable for getting up and down East Main. And I think on any other projects that we do, I think industrial, commercial would be the mainstream. I think anything that we take money away from our coffees, anywhere, if we're pulling money away from what we need in Torrington for school systems, for roads, for police, for services, it's just not worth it. We can't keep taking money out of the system, especially in the condition that we are financially. Thank you.
Thank you, George. It's $2 million. Still open to the public. Mr. Daly.
Good evening. My name is Mark Daly. I am a Harwinton resident, but I do have 2 investment properties in Torrington and paying taxes to the city. As you're probably aware, we've had a long time desire to have a legitimate community center in Torrington, and that's what we've been working on, and we seem to be running into roadblocks. At the end of the last meeting where we pitched this, Councilman Carpenter, I believe, said that he thought it might be worthy of further discussion, And we were kind of hoping for some follow-up on that. I know you can't comment on anything here, but we didn't know if that had gone anywhere. Since then, we've had a Facebook page going, as Mayor Carlin's aware, and as others of you are also. Since the last meeting, we've gained 36 more followers to our page. We're up to 236 followers. We've gotten a lot more likes. And I know our project may seem insignificant in light of some of the other things that are going on in the city, but we really believe that we have substantial public support for. We did a poll at the beginning of it. We have over 200 people that voted for it. It's been said that it's easy to click on the computer. We're willing to go beyond that. It's like if people don't think that the support is out there, if we could do a petition, I don't know what it would take to get people to realize that the people really do want to have a community center. And we really believe that we have a well thought out plan, and it will cost the city nothing that they're not spending already, and it will offer the residents a lot more services. And we're open to discuss it with any of you folks, privately, publicly, or whatever. And we just would appreciate questions and input whenever that can be arranged. And thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Still open to the public. Last call for public comment. Okay. Let's move to item number 2 on the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on July 19, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Waldron, seconded by Councilwoman Wagner. Are there questions on the minutes or the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to move on to item number 3, which is a presentation that is being presented by Paul Gianrico. I'm sorry, the architect's name is? I see Paolo Campos.
Paolo Campos.
Thank you. So just a quick introduction. Just by way of history, I'm hearing questions about why is this just showing up a couple of days before a council meeting? So a little bit of history. Watersway acquired the former Hotchkiss Brothers building and the Minetto Black, which I drive by twice a day, and I always remark how beautiful that facade is. So I agree with you, Janice. So the acquisition took place in 2017. I will tell you that this was a blighted piece of property. The city had been executing blight enforcement, zoning enforcement. We were chasing out homeless people. We were chasing out vandals in that property. It required fire watch, and it required considerable police patrols to protect the interest of the neighbors and protect the interest of the businesses that exist around that property. It was the subject of a foreclosure action. There were some environmental concerns that needed to be addressed. It was structurally and is structurally compromised. The entire back wall of a portion of that building is gone. And if you have occasion to look at that building from the perspective of the Farley property across the river, you will see that it almost looks like a war zone. The current tax revenue on that piece of property is $15,183. So when you talk about a cost analysis, what are we paying in city services to protect the interest of the property owner surrounding that property and maintain some semblance of safety? Those costs far exceed $15,000. This was around the same time that we were doing our BAR grant, BAR standing for the Brownfield Area-Wide Revitalization Program, and our Working Cities Challenge. Part of the BAR grant market analysis was to determine, what are the areas of focus? Where does the city, should we be focusing our investment? What is the greatest need that we see right here in the city of Torrington? That market analysis is on our city website, on the Economic Development Director's webpage. And on page 5 of that, you will see or find that the report back to us was that multifamily development market findings that the demand exceeded the supply, that 5% of millennial and empty nesters captured within a 10-mile drive of the city of Torrington supported the need for 288 additional apartments in the city of Torrington. And it was specific to multifamily apartments, not housing. Our single-family housing seemed to be quite adequate. Those findings, by the way, were pre-pandemic. What did we find out? We found out during the pandemic that Torrington, according to the New York Times study, was the third most relocated community from metropolitan areas, third on the list, and that was the Eastern Seaboard. So we have the most in-migration, third on the list of the most in-migration. I hear the question about jobs first and then housing. Everything that we know and learned in all of our analyses is it is housing first and the jobs will follow. However, here we are again talking post-pandemic, and I do have here in front of me the June 2021 labor market analysis done by the Department of Labor that indicates that in the city of Torrington, in the area of Torrington, the Torrington area, there are 1,563 unfilled jobs. Those jobs are broken down by industry. Those industries include healthcare, 395 unfilled jobs. Those are job postings where people are in need of these employees. Retail trade, 174, accommodations, food service, 139, manufacturing and construction, 120. The list is, if you go to the Department of Labor and you look at their research office study, they put this out, I think, every quarter. And these are all contained on pages 44 through 47 of the Department of Labor report. Clearly, jobs exist here. The housing is a desperate need. In our Working Cities Challenge, that became the emerging need. It was about how do we attract and retain our younger population? How do we keep students like Emmy Fedor here, provide them good, clean, healthy housing that establishes a quality of life, walkability, access to trails and to recreational amenities, and we will become a destination. So Feet on the Street supports business growth and industry sector growth. When I hear the question, where are the jobs they're going to walk to? I can tell you within a walking radius, there are probably about 250 jobs. I've sat down, Rista and I have been visiting a number of the manufacturers right here. And when we sit down and speak with them about the difficulty that they have finding employees, transportation is one of the problems. Being within a walking distance of those facilities is certainly going to help alleviate some of those stressors. As this council knows, a few weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, I asked this council to confirm or appoint me to the Northwest Transit Board because I recognize the need to have a stronger voice on that board. Just to be able to articulate to the board, to the Northwest Transit, and to the Department of Transportation what our needs are as it relates to bus stops. I had an email over the weekend. One of the merchants downtown is a little concerned. She's moving her store from one side of Water Street to the other, and she has an employee that is dependent on public transportation, and she needed my assistance in making sure that that public transportation, those bus stops would be available to her. So going back to 2019, we met with the developers that are here today to make their presentation, to discuss what is the potential for development in this property. It's historic, it's valuable, parts of it are incredibly beautiful. And we shared with them all of the information that we had working through the BAR grant and through the Working Cities Challenge. In early 2020, Watersway presented the proposal for the 155 market rate residential apartments with luxury amenities. I see pool, I see amenities that the younger generation is looking for, dog washing stations, right there on the trail, and investment in the trail as part of their pro forma. So we, of course, were interested in pursuing this with them, and the pandemic hit. So while they were pursuing their what they need to do to complete their capital stack and their pro forma during the pandemic, recently they reached out to us and said, we're ready to sit before the council and talk about the proposal, but we need some assurances from the city before we go much further that the city is going to work with us. This project has not gone through planning and zoning yet. It hasn't gone through any of the land use analysis or approval process. So this is still the due diligence phase, and that's what's being presented to the council today. I will tell you that if we do not work with a developer now to save this property, it will be too late. I have great concerns about this property surviving another winter. We need to remediate the blighted, abandoned condition. We need to provide additional housing as identified not only in our market analysis, but in this Department of Labor analysis that I just shared. We need to make connections between this high traffic area to the core downtown. This is how you create those feet on the street that support those businesses that are holding on by the skin of their teeth post-pandemic. This property will continue to decline in its existing condition and continue to devalue the businesses and the buildings that are immediately surrounding it. There will be no increase to our grand list. When we talk about a 20 or 30 or $40 million project, you have to work with developers to make that happen. That's $30 million added to our grand list. $30 million added to our grand list equates to $1.3 million, given the current mill rate, $1.3 million of additional tax revenue. Aside from the tax revenue, there's the quality of life, there's the housing need, there's all of those growth sectors that we talked about. So I do believe that what Watersway has proposed will vastly improve this section of the city, will add value to the surrounding property, support business growth, provide high-end market rate housing. I repeat it, it's not affordable housing. There are no deeds. I'm not sure where that information came from. They own this property, lock, stock, and barrel. And we know that investment in a developer that invests in this property will result in tax revenue to the city, long-term benefit. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Watersway, and I'm not sure if you want to flip it right over to, yeah, so the microphone is live here.
Just real quick, my name is Paul Generico. I'm president of Watersway and executive vice president of PayDirt LLC. This is my partner, Bill Deichler. He's president of PayDirt and executive vice president of Watersway. He'll give you a little more detail.
Thank you all for allowing us to make a presentation before you this evening. I'm Bill Deichler, together with my partner Paul, and his wife is also a third partner who could not be with us this evening because she had a conflict. Are co-owners of the two companies that own both the properties. They're two separate properties, 199 Water Street north to Church Street. The first company is called PayDirt LLC, which is our investment arm, and which owns 229 Church Street, the old Minetto building, which we love. We are going to save what we can. Just to quickly answer the question earlier, the footings there are going to be about 16 feet deep. And if anybody's ever been in the basement, it's only 7 feet. So
it's not tenable to save it, but we're going to build something back that's very, very close with a lot of respect to what's there. Let's see, Paul, he said that. Okay. So we're very excited about this project, and we've been working nonstop since we bought the first property in 2017, and then later bought the 229 piece a year or two later. We've had many conversations with key stakeholders in the city, such as Judy McEllen, 5 Points, and we're very happy for her that she just received a large grant from the state to pursue their goals. We've spoken to Lynn Gellermino, past executive director at the Warner Theater, and their needs. I've spoken to some of the attorneys that are connected with the Charlotte, Hungerford, and Hartford hospital system and their future expansion needs. I've also spoken with Lance Boynton in his capacity as chairman of the Northwestern Manufacturers Coalition and their need for housing. And according to an article by Bruno Matarazzo of the Republican American, there's also a manufacturing company which intends to move in, which will create 200 to 300 jobs. Where are they going to stay? Also, we've had a couple of conversations with Matt Cipriano of Sasso's Restaurant, and we actually got a nice tour of his expansion when it was in progress, and we really enjoyed that. And lastly, we had a bunch of conversations with the attendees at the Opportunity Zone conference that you had a while back, and that was very helpful. So when we purchased 199 Water Street at the end of 2017, we were impressed by many things. The property backs up to the beautiful river, and Torrington itself feels like it's poised for amazing growth. And the positive encouragement we've received from conversations with Mayor Carbone, Marty Connor, Rista Malanka, and the other department heads who were present about a year plus ago when we presented our concept, which is what you council members have before you. Aside from our initial investment, which was put in the paper, we spent a lot of money on environmental and other investigations, which we have to do to meet, to be in compliance with what has to happen before we can continue moving forward. We've assembled a very strong, knowledgeable team of professionals to bring this project to fruition. Our architects are Patrick Wynn out of New Haven. Paolo Campos will be presenting just in a short bit. The PAC group, local, will be doing the construction. Across the historical advisors helped us with the historical aspect. Harley and Deichler are the attorneys. We work with Val Farrow. We've worked with, talked with Patrick McMahon, Connecticut Main Street. HUD with their 221D4 program, NVCOG, CPACE, Mountain Trucking, as well as others. We're trying to work with local people as much as we can to create more jobs. Our vision is to rehab the 5 southern buildings, which is up to what everybody calls the metal building. And from the metal building north need to come down because they're in such terrible, dangerous, and unsafe conditions. We're preparing to save some of the key elements of the Minetto building, which is 229 Church Street, to be used in a similar building to be built in its place. We hope to have a sign off from SHPO in the next few weeks so we can get the ball rolling again. One of our first meetings when we came to Torrington was with Mark McCarran from the Historical Society, who gave us a great education on the properties, which was very helpful and much appreciated. Quite a history dating back to the Wilson's Mill, which many of you know, there's a beautiful granite stone headstone out in front of our building, which mentions that. So at this point, I'd like to ask Paolo, if you'd please make the presentation, and we'll take it from there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bill. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up. Excellent. And can everyone see my screen?
The council can, I don't know if members from the public want to shift over a bit. You can view it from the other angle.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. For the record, Paolo Campos. I'm an associate principal with Patrick Wynn Architects, As Bill mentioned, we are a firm of architectural designers based in New Haven, Connecticut. Our specialty is, well, I guess I should say one of our wheelhouses is in historic preservation, adaptive reuse, and multifamily housing. So this project really is a sweet spot for us. We love to work in these kinds of projects. We're based in the Fairhaven section of New Haven, which has a rich industrial history. And so for us to work in Torrington is an honor, a privilege, and something that really gets us psyched up. So as Paul mentioned, the property that we're speaking about is the former Hotchkiss Mill or Hotchkiss Brothers factory. As was mentioned, this is approximately the property line of the two parcels. So the lot area is a little north of 3 acres. It has been listed as being in both the downtown district zone with an incentive housing overlay. It is in the Water Street Historical District, and the buildings are listed as contributing resources to that district. So just laying out some of the existing conditions that we have to deal with. One thing I do want to add is that as of the last time I checked the regulations, the corner building at 229 Church was not yet in the historic district overlay, so we would hope that that would be added in. We've looked at the history of this. We've been to the building a number of times and really appreciate its history as this kind of industrial factory that actually in its own life has seen different uses and different lifespans. The building is listed with the Connecticut Historical Society. It has a nice narrative about what the building has been used for over its life, various activities related to lumber, yard activities, cabinetry. There's still actually many billiard tables and billiard table components in the building. Over the centuries, the site has seen a number of different uses and a number of different densities. As you can see in these maps from the 1800s, almost the entire site was covered, and buildings actually went right up to the edge of the Naugatuck River. That wouldn't be done today, but just to give you a sense of how dense and how heavily used this site has been through its history. So rotating things a little bit, in this case now north is to the right of the screen. This is the existing conditions as of May 2018. Things have changed a little bit since then, but not much. So this is a kind of a key plan which demonstrates existing buildings which will remain and be rehabilitated. The corner building that has been mentioned as being very, very precious, and rightly so. It's a beautiful facade. It is very prominent, and yet we recognize that there's problems structurally with the building. So we are committed to rebuilding it in kind, making it ADA compliant, while preserving the historic character that makes it so special. But you'd see also in the light gray with the red lines, the buildings that do have to come down because of the condition of the property and of those buildings and those structures. They're just too far gone to be reused. Here you see a photograph, kind of an extended elevation shot of that area. So you see here in the black outline, that's what will stay. Here in the red is what will be taken down, and then in blue, again, rebuilt very carefully in kind. This is a plan layout showing the different sort of building areas that we have been looking at, and kind of goes through very quickly into what we're doing to them as far as renovations, talking about residential in some cases, commercial, ground floor retail or restaurant, also some live work units and artist units, taking into account Torrington's really amazing nascent status as one of the artistic hotspots of the Northeastern region. Part of the project is also to build 2 new blocks of residential construction, again, with ground level amenity and retail space, and using that corner building as a sort of knuckle that connects those 2 together. You'll see in the plans and renderings, though, that that building retains its corner prominence and the new buildings are deliberately stepped back. So I won't dwell on these. Again, this is a concept, a test fit. These do need to go through the regulatory approvals process. So they have to be fully designed, fully reviewed by planning and zoning, by architectural review, by the town engineer. So we are not there yet. This is really a test fit scenario. So bear with me, but this is at the lower level, access from the rear of the site, where you see underground parking, some entrance areas, and some lower level studio live work units that would be used by the residents here. One thing that we do want to highlight, and you will see in the site plan eventually, is this walkway that goes along the Naugatuck River, curls back around on the southern edge of the property and comes back up to Water Street through this amazing portal that exists there right now, where there's a very large gated opening and that the building extends over across the top of it. Here you see that portal going through at street level. The change in color represents the retail or business uses that would be proposed, with the residential areas behind. And again, there's that knuckle building, as I'm referring to it. In this scenario, we were calling for a kitchen that would kind of be tucked in the back. The facade would exist as kind of your main storefront dining area. And the second story might be kind of a mezzanine area as well for special events or gatherings. But again, you see the residential combination of different unit typologies, again, as a test fit, so that not everything is the same. There's diversity in offerings for people at different life stages or different needs, whether it's empty nesters, millennials, or people in between. We don't want to discriminate and kind of make everything exactly the same. The cookie cutter approach does not fit. So as you see here, moving up, this is the second story. Down here is that bridge that I mentioned that crosses the walkway that connects Water Street back to the property. But you see, you have a series of amenity spaces, could be gymnasiums, could be spas, could be pet washing stations, could be driving and golf swing analyses. Many different scenarios at play here. Based on market research studies, we'll be kind of developing this as the design progresses. But again, the residential units around that building, a connection kind of elevated above the street so that residents of the new construction can come over and use the more historic amenities in the existing building to be renovated. As mentioned, these are market rate, not affordable. So as I mentioned, the diversity of units, here are some on the rooftop of that existing brick building that would have very generous terraces, very generous proportions and room sizes, and overlooking the Naugatuck River. So really amazing views. One consideration that I'll get into in a moment as we kind of keep going up the building is that we want to be environmentally sustainable. These buildings will be designed to meet or exceed the current energy codes in the state of Connecticut, which are getting more and more stringent in the face of climate change and escalating utility costs. We're going to try very hard to go all electric with these buildings, other than a few generators for emergency power. But so what that means is you will not have significant sources of combustion fumes and byproducts. So everything being all electric is very efficient. It makes the utility companies up their game as far as producing clean power, but it really helps everybody in the local environment because, again, you're not burning 155 hot water heaters and furnaces. So it's the kind of trend that the building industry is headed in. Again, these are just representative plans of the units to give investors, give the owners, give people involved in the project a sense of the scale of these things. These are not small, compact units. These are generous. We are fitting in multiple large beds, furniture, well-appointed kitchens, bathrooms, and storage space, which is a huge need. As has been mentioned, it's 155 units. We know parking is going to be an issue. We will not have a parking space for every single unit. However, Connecticut is moving away from the concept of one parking space per one bedroom, especially in urban situations, recognizing that not everyone wants a car or has a car. And so some of those parking requirements are antiquated, very mid-20th century. And so we are looking to that as one way of reducing the parking. But we will work with the city, obviously, as we go through the land approvals process to make sure that we're satisfying the requirements. Again, just some statistics. I won't dwell on these, but just given general areas, the vast majority of it tied to residential. There is some amenity space, retail and market, and then support areas and parking, circulation, mechanical, and maintenance. Just to give some flavor to the project, these are the kinds of amenities and the kind of appointments that we're talking about. You know, really looking at a diverse range of uses, both for fitness and wellness. Pet grooming is a big thing for especially millennials, bike parking, other kind of unusual things that you might not see in your 20th century developments, but are really a necessity in today's world. And then also communal spaces. This may seem a little bit strange given the pandemic, but once upon a time, and I think once we get past this pandemic, these communal spaces, community spaces will be a selling point for this and for other projects. It's not just inside too, it's also to the general public as well. So looking at marketplaces, restaurants, things that feel very distinctively Torrington, that will leverage existing businesses, existing farms in the area, and really be a sort of marketplace hub for fresh produce, for local stuff, really kind of unique to the place, and the flavors that are unique and representative of Torrington and of the area. And again, just a view of what the inside of the units might look like: vaulted ceilings, industrial feel to things, but lots of glass, wood finishes, sliding doors, nice contemporary kitchens, and well-appointed bathrooms. There's a lot of work to be done, but we are very well versed in these kinds of projects and of the challenges involved in making these buildings compliant with current codes and standards, both with building and fire codes and also energy codes. So we go through these analyses as a matter of course in all of these projects. And so, we have a good relationship with local and state building inspectors and fire marshals. So confident that when challenges come up with these projects, we can find a solution that works for everyone involved and nothing gets derailed. So just some very representative views of what the project might look like if and when it moves forward. So this is a view looking at Water Street at the existing buildings which have been renovated. Here's a view of that building on the corner of Water and Church Streets. As you see, that's rebuilding the facade in kind and then stepping that taller building off to the back a little bit. As I mentioned, rebuilding this facade so that it maintains the character and flavor of the existing building. But again, it meets accessibility codes, which right now it does not. It is going to meet energy codes and fire safety codes. So we'll make it safe, but also, as best as possible, make it feel like it's preserving that really distinctive presence that it has. This is a view of what we're proposing to be the marketplace. Could be a restaurant, could be a little shopping center, but this is the interface between the public and the private. So as residents leave for work for the day or come back home, they're stopping by here. People are walking up from Main Street or from other areas to come get a cup of coffee, get a sandwich, what have you. But really making this a hub for activity in what is right now just an empty block. This is a view from the rear of the site. So you're seeing the renovated building here, looking back out towards that portal over at Water Street. So there's that bridge that I was mentioning before. So envisioning that as part of the walkway, extending the canal trail, and really making it a destination of sorts. It could be an artist gallery for exterior sculpture or other objects, and that would be hosted right here on the site. Here's a kind of a pulled out view of that. You mentioned a pool, that would be in this elevated plinth over here between the two buildings. So it's really kind of private and sheltered for the residents, but still doesn't break up the view of the Naugatuck River. So here you see that. The greenway, the canal trail, is very important to us. We really love the idea of interfacing with that and bringing it down here along the Naugatuck River shoreline that abuts our site, and finding some way of leveraging this amazing silo, which is actually not a water tower, it's a sawdust tower, where all the saws and power tools, all the dust that they created was stored in this, which was then brought back into the building for heating purposes. We're not going to do that. As I mentioned, we don't want to burn anything on site, but we would love to reuse this space as a little historical exhibit of what has been on the property before. And I think someone from the public mentioned some idea of what the history of this site has been. We would create this as a sort of a shrine or a kiosk that would highlight that history in a very unique way, where you see the river on one side that was key to that lumber and milling industry. And on the other side, you see the buildings and the development. So it's a perfect spot for that kind of feature. Here's a view of the entry from the rear into the new residential tower. And I'll just touch briefly on the site elements. Again, this has yet to go through engineering or the overall site design, but we have enlisted the services of 2 Design, who's a very well-known landscape architect in Torrington and in Connecticut throughout. We've worked with them on several projects and are very happy to have their expertise here. So I'll talk briefly about the site design. We know it's an urban site, so we're going to work with plantings that are very tolerant of this area. So not just the harsh winters, but also the hot summers as well. So we have a track record of picking the right plants and trees that provide the right balance of visual interests, shading, and flowering beauty to really make this thing feel well integrated. Entry points, again, we'll have flowering trees and shrubs, so give visual interest throughout. It's not going to feel like it does right now, like an industrial area gone to seed. Materials, again, working with materials that work in this area. So concrete sidewalks, brick pavers where we need them. The parking lot will be asphalt. We'll talk a little bit about the stormwater retention systems. If there's a playground, making sure that we comply with current standards with the early childhood office for friendly and safe materials for the children. The greenbelt materials will be to be determined. So stormwater, as I mentioned, what we're planning on is a net reduction in impervious area, historic conditions. Right now, things just drain off into the river. We're not going to do that. We're going to capture and retain the water on site, treat it in infiltration basins, comply with best practices for low impact development. We may even do stormwater harvesting to be determined, which would be used for gray water purposes like irrigation. There has been mention of transit, and that is something that we are interested in pursuing only because of the need that cities like Torrington and the surrounding suburbs have for integrating themselves with each other and providing quality transportation to and from different areas. This includes everything from bus shelters to bike parking facilities to power charging stations for electric vehicles as the way of the future. The canal trail, we do want to interface with it. As you see here, it's that kind of pink line that kind of runs around the area. So we want to connect with it, leverage it, become part of it. Again, we're going to work with the city, work with the designers to make sure that this thing can be worked in a way that's sympathetic, that is effective, and that feels like it belongs. And so that connection that we're proposing right now runs along the back of the site, as you see along that walkway. And as I mentioned, connects back into that portal that you see. Here's what it looks like today. And again, that's what we want it to look like when we're done. So much more attractive, much more pleasant, much safer feeling. And as I mentioned, the observation deck and historic exhibit room for that silo. So again, we have to go through zoning. We understand that. We're still going through the due diligence phase to some extent. As Paul and Bill are taking care of the financial and pro forma issues, there are still several other things that need to be touched on, including geotechnical, ecological assessments, and floodplain assessments. However, having looked at some of these with the experts, we feel all of these are eminently doable and will not preclude the project from moving forward successfully. As I mentioned before, site and building utility services. So really looking at all electric, minimize the use of on-site fossil fuels. If we can add photovoltaics and try to generate some power on site, we would be happy to do that. Site lighting, again, will be designed to comply with the latest standards for dark sky compliance. No uplighting, no light pollution, all warm light that's better for our visual acuity at night. And then security, obviously, we're going to take care of that and be very cognizant of that as it develops. So that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to having further discussions with this group and with all the different boards and commissions and authorities having jurisdiction in Torrington. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campos. I would just like to add, I know that there was one question that I heard earlier, or over the weekend, there was a question about the dormitory style apartments. I would share with the members of the board that, as you heard, Waters Way was meeting with so many of our stakeholders, including the Five Points Gallery, who identified the need for artist residencies. You know, these are the residencies where they need a bed, you know, they need access to a kitchen, but they don't need a whole apartment. So, so being able to include that as one of the elements in this plan, and even though it's very early in the planning stages and conceptual, I think it was really brilliant of them to recognize that that was a need that was identified by the Five Points Gallery or Five Points Center for Arts, and that they are certainly listening to the needs of the community. So,
thank you.
Closing.
We just wanted to mention a couple other things really quickly. We are targeting solar on the buildings as well. I didn't hear Paolo say it because I don't hear very well out of this ear. But solar is important to us. We've also looked into potential geothermal. We're not sure that's going to work on this project. I've done it successfully on a few projects of my own. We do have the underground parking. The charging stations that we're talking about will also have cars there that people can rent by the hour. So you don't need to own a car because we're trying to cut down on the use of cars. The other big thing is we have on-site storage lockers because everybody has too many things and it'd be much easier to walk across the hall in your unit and put stuff away. Those are the big things. The other things were already mentioned, like, you know, bike storage, pet washing, and like that. Thank you very, very much for your time this evening. We appreciate it.
Sure. All right. We'll open the floor if there are questions from the council members on the presentation or the project. Councilwoman Rouette.
Well, I, for one, am very excited, and I thank you for your interest in Torrington. Over the many years I've served on the city council, that has been an eyesore. Many of you may not know, but that was an old PCM site, a bar and restaurant, which some of us have attended in the past, younger years. But it has been an eyesore. And every time I talk to someone that comes down Water Street, makes that comment. So I, for one, am very excited. I hope you'll be respectful of, you know, the historic point that was made. We have longtime members of our community that really value history and the industrial part of our community. So thank you. But I also hope we have what I always consider the JCPenney, I guess the Stop and Shop mall over there, which is had a lot of vacant buildings in, but it seems like, stimulate more interest in that particular area as well. And I love the fact that it's mixed use. I have had the opportunity to sit on the TDC, which is our chair is right here. And, you know, I know in several plans for the downtown redevelopment talked about the mixed use and the access to trails. And, you know, I am not a millennial, just so you know, but certainly I'll have grandchildren that I would love to have continued interest in Torrington. But I, for one, am excited. I know that this is just a conceptual plan, but I do feel that it is something very much needed. And it's a shame sometimes that we're using this as a political sort of ping pong, but it is election year. So, but for many, many years, that particular location has been, you know, mentioned by many of the constituents, you know, that I've talked to. And so I know you've heard some negative tonight, but I, for one, am excited and thank you for investing in Torrington.
Thank you very much.
Floor is still open. Comments, questions?
I had several questions. You answered some of them. The dormitory housing caused my phone to ring several times today. I also work closely with Judy McElhone, so I understand that position. So I'm glad you explained it that way. The presentation is phenomenal. I think, you know, you've touched on everything, but I still have some questions. I know it's not affordable housing. I'm curious as to what the rents will be, what range of rents you are considering. When you talk about security and we're along the trail, I know if I was living in a complex like that and it was along a trail and people I didn't know were walking through all the time, that could be a problem for me. I know it's been for my mother-in-law, but that's another story. But that's another consideration. Also, while I know that this has been in discussion for a while, we only got this 4 days ago and the newspaper got it as well. And so this is why my phone was ringing today, because people have a lot of questions. So I don't feel personally I've had enough time to look at this and to look at cost analysis, but thank you for your presentation.
Sure. As far as the rents go, it's a little up in the air at this point because, when we did our study a couple of years ago, it said one thing. We think it's the same, if not higher, but we'll have to do another market study to make sure HUD is happy with, the numbers and that they still hold true. So right now, can't really fully answer that, but it's going to be market rated. It will not be affordable.
That's good. I appreciate that answer. The other question, with all the amenities, the suggested amenities, I know that that's not a hard and fast plan yet, but a dog washing station, the gym and all of those other things, is that going to be included in the rent or is there going to be like association fees with that?
We've toyed with that back and forth to try and make it make sense. So that's still in discussion right now. We have to obviously find out what all it's, the specific costs are. We have general costs right now, but at this point, we're still working on that.
More? That's it.
That's it. I think Paul.
Yeah.
Councilman Cavanero.
Thank you. Several things. I don't understand why since 2017, so many stakeholders have been involved in these discussions, yet this is the first time the city council has been involved. It's a little frustrating to me. This is not a political ping pong. This is doing my due diligence as a city councilman to fully understand what this is and what the consequences long-term mean for the city of Torrington. So let's begin with a few basic questions. This is not affordable housing, it's market value. Market value defined as what exactly? Just whatever you can get for it, or are there market value? Please define your term market value.
Well, market value in terms of what's existing is one thing.
Yeah.
It's very hard to determine what the market value in Torrington would be for brand new housing because none exists. So we're basing our numbers on other developments that are not super close to here, but.
Is there any component in this? I don't know what the HUD relationship is. Is there any government subsidy of this program? And what would that be?
Well, HUD is a government entity, but it's not really a subsidy. Yeah. It's a loan.
But okay, I know.
Yeah. So the HUD 221-4D program is a market rate program. It's not affordable housing, and there is no subsidy coming from a result of that program. It's lower rate, fixed rate, 40-year amortization mortgage at a lower market rate that we couldn't get at a bank.
Okay. How do you proceed? How do you proceed with a business model like this? Clearly a very substantial investment without knowing how much revenue you can generate, without knowing what people are going to pay. How do you proceed with this I can understand Penrose, for instance. Okay. Penrose says, yeah, we're going to get subsidies, basically. Taxpayers are going to support this. We're going to get the grant, whatever. There's the renters themselves are not making your profit with Penrose, exclusively making profit for Penrose. There's an awful lot of taxpayer money involved in making their profit. You're telling me there's no taxpayer involvement in
the rental of these or the building of this property?
There's no subsidy in the program. So I want to, if you don't
Yes, sir, go on.
mind, just want to step back a little bit and say, we've gone through the process of doing market study.
Yeah.
And our market study is very consistent with the city of Torrington's market study. The problem is that there is no comparable of our building to anything else anywhere near Torrington. And that's really it, right? So we're trying to create something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And in a market where the judgment is, what can we see, what can we touch, what can we model against? We've modeled against what we can point to and say, okay, this is a reasonable comparable. There's just nothing here in Torrington. And so there's a bit of explain to HUD, a bit of explaining to investors as to why Torrington. And so we've been making the case. And so your question about touching base with a number of stakeholders before we came to the city council, we haven't been ready to discuss with city council as to what do we need to get this project up and moving. Now we're at that point that we can start to have those conversations where external investors are going to want a certain percentage return. HUD is going to want a certain amount of security that the product that we're putting forth is one that's sustainable and that's safe for their investment. So it's protection of all the stakeholders, and that's Bill and I, when we first got together in any of our workings, we're always looking for a win-win-win situation.
Well, I'm sure you are. The investors, I guess I'm a little confused. You're attracting investors in, how is that process? I mean, I'm used to, I'm used to local. Guy builds an apartment building, there's 8 units, he knows what he can rent them for, blah, 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 blah. And there's the profit, or he messes it up and he loses money and forecloses, whatever. You guys are trying to get investors on this. So explain that, number one. And number two, I'd like to know a follow-up question, which is, if your model goes south, for whatever reason, you don't get the investors, or you get the investors, but you don't get the number, can these units be converted to Section 8 housing or affordable housing?
We don't have a plan for that.
I know you don't have a plan. The question is, can they be?
Anything can be converted, of course.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
we didn't even think of that, because we're convinced this is going to work. So
just so you know, so I'm not just trying to throw darts at your proposal here. I mean, it's very impressive. There's a lot of, this could be that, and this could be this, and could be a lot of could be's. And I'm old enough and worked in various fields long enough that, I've seen an awful lot of shiny objects, and I've been guilty of biting, like many people. And I'm just trying to do my due diligence as a city council member, hearing for the very first time a unique proposal for developing this process. And quite frankly, there's no way I'm going to support the MOU vote. I will move that we table this for more consideration. I do believe I, as a city councilman, want to think about this much longer and harder and get the data that the mayor is presenting to us as data, but I want to see it with my own eyes and understand who presented that data, who organized it, and how much, what I can pull out from that data to consider this further. I'm not against it by any means. I may support this, but right now I'm not in that position. So, the parking thing as a model, that bothers me a lot. I mean, again, growing up in this town, car town, people just travel. I'm not sure, again, it's your money and your investors' money, that this thing can work without people being able to hop in their car and go to Avon, go to, go skiing, go whatever. That, again, I really need to think about that, because that goes to what my due diligence says. If that idea fails, you guys are really in trouble with this. The 5 Points Gallery argument, I have to think about that. We were sold Penrose, the city council. I voted against it. I voted against it for a number of reasons, largely due to the questions that came from the Board of Education and Ms. Capabianco, who was the chair. Not her questions, but I was on the same page as hers, trying to figure out what this could mean, Penrose, that is, in terms of increased bed costs, which has been, a huge sinkhole for the budgets of Torrington for many, many years. But in this particular case, I I just want to get more, I want more time to really think about how this thing is supposed to work, what happens if it doesn't work, and what likely would be your investors, your corp's approach to this property if your original plan doesn't. I'd like to be able to think about that. So I will stand down now. Suffice it to say, I'm certainly intrigued by the proposal. I have a lot more questions, and there's no way I'm going to support pushing this to an MOU. What I was about to say about one more thing, I'm sorry. As Penrose, we were told when it was first proposed to us that they would have four Section 8 housing units, okay? And the rest would be affordable housing. And in very, very short order, that 4 became 8 became 12. It continued to increase. I'm not even sure where it is now, okay? But in the sense of the, whatever they say, the camel's nose under the tent, you know, that is something that me as a city councilman has to think about what businessmen's options will be if the original plan does not work. And I have to think about protecting people that voted for me, and that's why I'm being hesitant about jumping on board tonight. Okay? Thank you.
I did have one more question.
Councilwoman Wagner.
Just, I know this is the bad word, brownfields. Is that your responsibility for completely cleaning up that site?
Yes.
Because sometimes the city gets pulled in and inadvertently, and I just want to make sure that we're not going to be pulled into that.
That's on us.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a big difference between Penrose and our
Well, I'm not talking Penrose, I'm just talking brownfields.
Yep.
Because that's been, that's been looming above us for a long time, so thank you.
Other questions from the council for Waters Way? Right. I will only add in closing that this MOU is nothing more than an agreement to work with Waters Way in continuing their efforts and their due diligence to be able to prepare their capital stack to entice their investors. There's no promise other than the promise that we will work with them and investigate this. This MOU is extended for 24 months from the date of the approval of the MOU, should it be approved this evening. So you can see where we're setting up a timeline here. Everybody's worried that they only got this 4 days ago. You have to start somewhere. They had to start somewhere. They had to start with, what does this community tolerate by way of development, housing, commercial? So they had to do their due diligence to get to this point. Now they're ready to engage the city to say, we're at this point, we think we can move forward with this project. And we just need the city to say, yes, we're with you, we'll work with you, we'll help you through the next 24 months of your due diligence.
Right, but I'm not at that position. Okay. I'm not ready. Every time MOUs, okay, whatever, 15 years now I've been between Board of Education, City Council. MOUs have always put the train on the track, and once that train is on the track, it is much, 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 much harder to get it off the track. And I don't see any reason whatsoever why a project of this magnitude, this cost, this many variables, the City Council has to put the train on the track with a 1-hour discussion. It just defies common sense to me, and it defies due diligence for City Council men and women in terms of doing their fair job to represent the people of this town. I don't see why we can't get one more meeting, allow us a follow-up meeting on this meeting, put the MOU on that meeting, and now we will have had 2 weeks to digest this information with the additional material that you are able to provide us. And I absolutely am convinced then we will have a very sensible agreement and consensus about an MOU, Mayor. That is my personal feeling.
Okay. I concur with Paul. And also, Councilman Oliver is not here this evening, so he's not part of this conversation. And I think if we postpone it a couple of weeks to get more information and to give Councilman Oliver also an opportunity to get caught up and to learn what we learned this evening, that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. If you want to.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, so I'm moving into item number 4, which is the motion that would authorize the mayor to act on behalf of the city to execute the memorandum of understanding with Waters Way and Pay Dirt regarding the proposed development at Hotchkiss Mill at 199 Water Street and 229 Church Street. Do I have a motion for discussion purposes?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councilman Rubino, and seconded by Councilwoman Ruette. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so Rista, did you want to talk a little bit about, because I think that the meat of the MOU is really for Watersways purposes to continue their due diligence in determining what is their, what does the capital stack look like? How will this attract investors so they can continue to determine whether or not this is even feasible. They need a certain amount of assurance from the city that, we're on board with them. And the real crux of that would be the tax abatement, or I hate using the word abatement. It's a deferral. So I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about the deferral. And can you pull up the, there's just a couple of slides we wanted to, and I think that the council will recognize all of the discussion on these tax incentives. They are familiar projects. They're projects that were approved by the board in the last couple of years, including the Town and City Development Act that was approved by this board in March. So if you want to take it from there.
Good evening. So as the mayor just mentioned, the Town and Cities Development Act, Chapter 114, we talked about this a couple months ago, and we were talking about we're not in a position yet where we have so much demand that we have to incentivize development to come here. We want to encourage good development. And this project is that development that's going to make us leap forward so that we don't need to continue to provide incentives in development. This is exactly why we adopted Chapter 114, to make sure that these types of projects are incentivized to come here and start to change the culture with the blighted properties and repair these properties. What we're asking and what the MOU is asking for today is not a full deferral. It's not a full abatement of the taxes. As the mayor mentioned, the current taxes are just over $15,000. That will never go down unless we do nothing, and then the assessment will go down and then the taxes will go down. But with the development, the taxes will be substantially higher than what they currently are. It will be built in over several years. But at this point, we don't know exactly what that looks like. But we want to make sure that this council will support some kind of program or tax agreement so that they can continue to work to make this happen. And we know that tax abatements work and tax agreements work. We've done it a couple of times, and there's a couple examples. If you go to the next slide, we put up an example of Keystone. When Keystone, before that property came into the development that it is now, we were getting just over $7,000 a year in taxes. This year in 2020, we're getting $429,000 a year in taxes. After the 7 years, which is what this abatement was, or deferral, it goes over time, we'll have job or tax revenue increase of $827,000 a year. This project, Keystone, would not have gotten off the ground if it wasn't for this tax agreement. It wouldn't have happened because the first couple of years are always the hardest. Getting the investors and getting your capital stack, your performer to work, you need to show that it works and that it can get on the ground. Once it's on the ground, it builds demand and that market rate increases. You can start to sustain more expenses. And that's why the taxes increase over years, but we need to make sure that it can get off the ground, which is why we're asking to consider an abatement or a tax agreement or deferral or what we come up with that make sure this project gets off the ground and the city does get tax revenue and increase over the next several years. And the next slide is Sullivan Honda. And, this was a much smaller, less years. But because of this tax agreement through our tax policy, we're seeing a $70,000 a year improvement. The only thing too that I just wanted to add, in addition to why we need to work with this developer and make it happen. But when we talk about economic development and economic growth, it's more than just bringing businesses to town. We need to bring businesses to town that can succeed. They need to succeed by having a qualified workforce. They need to succeed by having people on the street that support their business. So housing has to be a part of your economic development plan and growth. And in some slides with the facade improvement that we'll talk about later, I included the slide, and I hadn't planned to talk about it today, but I think it's important to just bring it up in this realm too. The 3 Ps of economic development are people, place, and policy. And building housing that attracts and retains a workforce is part of economic growth that supports our businesses. As the mayor mentioned earlier, our manufacturers, they're looking for engineers. They're looking for HR people. They're looking for a wide range of people, and they just don't have the talent to fill those positions here. They're going outside of the region to try to bring people in, and we don't have the housing that supports that. So this is critical for economic growth. Plus, it is just about 15,000 square feet of commercial development, which will bring jobs. So I would ask the city council, and I do understand, we don't know what this is going to look like, so you're not prepared to vote in favor of that quite yet. But we bring any proposal back to you. So as they begin to go through their planning process and things, planning and zoning comments, wetlands comments, their investors' comments, this gives them the confidence to start to go through that process and that proposal, so that when we come back to you, there'll be a firm plan of this is what it is, and this is what abatement or agreement is needed to make it happen. At this point, it's very preliminary, but it's what they need to continue moving on with this project and make sure that it can happen, and make sure that it remains the quality that they're proposing. If we have to cut expenses, what gets cut? Is it the pool? Is it the passive housing? We want to make sure that this project stays that high quality, that will attract those market rate renters and those commercial businesses to that space. And I think just giving the confidence to these developers that we're on board and we support this is what we're asking for tonight.
And that we will review the policies as they currently exist within the cities.
Correct. Right. We can't just do whatever we want here. We are still bound by statute and policies with any kind of a agreement that we come to. So it's not a free-for-all. It's not a this is it. This is a very much more detailed plan will be presented to council at some point in the future.
Over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Over the next 24 months.
Right.
I don't think that we were opposed to the project.
No.
I just think that we would like a couple of weeks and to include Councilman Oliver in it as well. I think this is a great project. I see a lot of benefit from this. And I sit on the Regional Economic Development Board, and I know all the processes and the agreements that are in place and how abatements work. I'm just asking that we have a couple of weeks they can consider working on their plans. They may make them even better, but just to have another, I saw this, I got this Friday. I read it a little bit Friday, had other things to do. I spent time with it yesterday, and then my phone started ringing today. I can't answer a lot of questions till I listen to them tonight. So I think having just 2 weeks that we can talk about it some more, that we can include Councilman Oliver would be, a common sense thing to do. But thank you, Rista, I appreciate it.
Mayor, did Councilman Oliver have an opportunity to talk to you over the weekend?
He did. Well, not over the weekend. He called me a little earlier today. He has a terrible sinus infection and couldn't participate. But he was well aware that this was on the agenda, and he certainly didn't express any concern or desire to have us table it. He wanted.
I'd like to move the motion.
Okay. Then I'm going to call the motion.
I think it was moved.
It was moved.
It's been moved. I'm going to call. The motion made was to authorize the mayor to act on behalf of the city, execute the memorandum of understanding, and regarding the proposed development of 199 Water Street to 29 Church Street. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye or nay?
Any abstentions?
Opposed.
You're opposed. Okay.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-2. And we will be bringing Watersway back before the council. There is nothing in this MOU that describes what that tax abatement would look like. But this at least affords them an opportunity to continue their due diligence with their working on their pro forma.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, please.
I will vote continuously against this project unless the following conditions are met. Number one, I want a conversation with the Board of Education and these developers about what they expect might be the impact on our educational system by their proposal, number one, okay? Number two, I want more definition. I don't understand things like we were sold the Penrose project on the idea that we would have all these artists coming in through the 5 Points portal. And it was a great thing because they can't afford their own apartments. So it will be subsidized housing, and that is a good thing. Now I hear one of the cohorts that you're hoping to attract to this non-subsidized are the same 5 Point Gallery students. You can't have it both ways. These people, you know, this target demographic of renters are either able to afford their housing or they're not able to afford their housing. And we now have two different housing projects that are referencing them as potential clients, and they're based on whether the taxpayers are going to support them because they have to, or no, these people are perfectly willing to pay, capable of paying their own rent. These are the kinds of things that I want to be able to discuss more fully. Now, of course, you're taking that option away from me before the MOU, but there's just an awful lot of mysterious information in this proposal that I am just not comfortable with. I want to know the specific impact of what you anticipate to be to our public education system, okay? Because we are just revenue negative on so many projects that have come forward recently, and this to me has all that potential. And I will just leave it at that. But I need more, much more. Oh, the other thing, Mayor, whatever data you have that you referenced tonight, you held up and waived, I want that as soon as possible, and I want all the city council members to have it. Whatever those studies are, I would like to see that.
So about the Department of Labor,
All of it,
labor market, and you want you want the bar grant market analysis, which was presented to the council in 2019?
Sure.
Okay, all right. And I just do want to clarify, when the Penrose project was being discussed, 5 Points Gallery, 5 Points Center for Arts did support the project, but we weren't talking about the artists being, artist residencies being a part of that. Right. Artist residencies are short-term leases, short-term stays. We identified that artists who relocate to Torrington can take advantage of the affordable housing that Penrose was offering. And to the earlier you alluded to 4 and then 8 and then 12 affordable low-income units. Those units have been, I'm looking at Rista when I say this, have been connected with LARC, our Litchfield County supportive housing with LARC. So entirely different. I understand the confusion, but definitely worth more conversation, and we can bring that back. Other questions before I move on to the next item? Go ahead.
If I could just address the dormitory style housing. We, in the course of talking to many stakeholders, consider this to be a possibility. I have 5 kids. They are all trying to move out of their parents' house. And putting it into a dormitory style housing would allow them to share rents and meet market rents with 4 people and using the dormitory style share a living room, just like they would at college. It's not meant to be subsidized in any way. That wasn't.
I guess that would be parent subsidized, wouldn't it?
No. Well, no longer subsidized by putting them out into their own place.
Well, that only lasts so long. I mean, I just want more information on the. I mean, Rista referenced. You know, there's a lot of engineering jobs, okay, and we don't have housing for engineers. And I don't know. I mean, I'm the son of an engineer. I don't know any engineers. I sure as hell don't know any software engineers who are going to rent an apartment where they can't have a car because they're going to have to take a bus when they want to get things. Those are not the engineering and medical professional people that I know.
And I don't want to be contentious, but one of the trends that's actually happening is the idea of not actually buying a car. It's actually paying for it in short increments for your usage of that car. Rather than have a car that sits in a parking lot that is not being utilized, the concept is to actually pick up the car, rent it for the period of time that you're using it for, and pay fractional for it. And then you can see that in national transportation evaluations right now. That's a whole big fight between the big three car makers and right. So that's just a concept. And the other thing about the dormitory style housing is that's a concept, and they can easily become single bedroom or studio apartments. There's no restriction for us to do 3 or 4 dormitory style. So that's the flexibility of it. But we heard what we heard in evaluating the market, which is Torrington, and what's going on around Torrington. And I think that's the important part, is that we want to be flexible. We want to consider the millennials and the empty nesters, which are the 2 big components of our building. The majority of the housing is studio apartments and 1 bedrooms. That's the vast majority. So it's not conducive necessarily to big families like mine. So I just want to clarify that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, I'm not saying I'm opposed to this idea, because I am not.
They'll be back before the council a number of times, and they have a lot of work to do, obviously, to get through all of those other regulatory processes. So there'll be a lot of conversation about this. And with that said, I think we'll close that discussion and move into item number 5. We'll be looking for a motion to approve the mayor's appointment of Luke Pergola and Adla Kiwan as regular members of the Economic Development Commission to fill the remainder of the 5-year terms that are expiring on February 9th, 2025.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Waldron.
Second.
And seconded by Councilman Rubino.
I have a question, Mayor, with all due respect.
Yes.
I expected to see 2 more names on this list, Robert DeMalley and Brian Arnold. They had both been contacted by RISTA.
Yes.
Bob has been an integral part of the Conservation Commission with Planning and Zoning. He was on the PAC committee for the new school. Brian Arnold is a young Torrington High School grad school graduate who has focused on municipal development and economic development. And both of them had been given the impression they would be included on this. And so I'm just disappointed that I'm not seeing their names on here.
Sure. No, that's a point well made. So Brian did reach out to RISTA over the weekend to inquire about his request. I understand that Brian is actually running for a city council seat.
But he hasn't won.
With the November, no, I understand that. But it's a short 3 months from now. That's an opportunity, I think, for us to visit right after the election. Should he win his seat on the council, we would have to replace him. So it just didn't make sense to me to make an appointment for 3 months and then have to fill that vacancy again.
I'm happy about your confidence that he will win.
Yes.
However, this Economic Development Commission has been so filled up with vacancies for so long, and I think it can only be an asset to RISTA to have a full complement of people.
And I would also say with Robert DeMalley, because he does serve on another board, that was the other reason we weren't moving him forward for this. So we're trying to fill these vacancies. Obviously, this is an important board. I will say, yes, vacancies happened over the last year. As a result of the pandemic, there were fewer meetings. Certain people did peel away. We recognize this. Both Mr. Arnold, well, I should say Mr. Arnold, is certainly a strong consideration. And right after the election, I would absolutely revisit that if he does not take his seat. You're moving it. I'm going to I hear a call for the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6. This doesn't require a motion, but Rista, you're back on.
Point of order, Mayor.
Yes.
With all due respect, I'm going to leave. It's been,
Okay. I know. I'm grateful that you came. And our condolences to you and your family.
Thank you.
I truly didn't expect to see you tonight, so thank you.
No, and I didn't expect. The truth is, both of my parents would have been sadly disappointed in me if I used they're passing as an excuse to not do my job. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Paul.
You're on.
Facade improvement, right?
I'm sorry?
Facade improvement?
Yes.
I just don't have the agenda. I want to make sure I'm talking about the right thing.
Yes.
So, I think you had gotten a few slides that I prepared, so I don't have a slide presentation, but you can just talk to the information that I submitted. The Torrington Facade and Building Improvement Program is what we're calling this. I think you are probably familiar with the Facade Improvement Program, which the city had with state funds back in 2013. At that time, it was a $500,000 grant from the state, and we had 40 applications, and we saw a lot of great successes that came through this for facade improvements. There's not been state or federal money available since 2013 for additional programs. So when we applied to Building Healthier Communities, we wanted to include this because we know that improving the facades of buildings attracts more development, it improves the neighborhood, and it improves assessment. But we also know that we need to make it attractive for businesses to come here. And when we've preserved so many of our historic buildings, there's so much benefit to that. There's a lot of culture. There's, it's unique, it's attractive, but they're old buildings. They don't meet today's code. So as businesses try to grow or new businesses try to come in, the cost for them to do that is exponential versus a new building. So we want to continue to preserve our older buildings and make it so that businesses can come in. So when we applied to Building Healthier Communities, we changed this from a facade, just a facade, to a facade and building improvement. So this will allow code improvements inside businesses. It's not intended for specific tenant fit out for commercial kitchens or retail space. It's intended for those handicap bathrooms, building code improvements, fire code improvements, as well as the facade improvements. And you'll see in the project description, it kind of goes through all of the things that are allowed in there. You know, I kind of alluded to this just a few minutes ago, but with the Building Healthier Communities, we use the three P's of prosperity to talk about this and how to enhance our community assets. And our commercial building stock is an asset in our community, and we need to make sure we're preserving it. Some of this stuff I've already talked about, but we want to make sure that we're having sustainable, modern commercial spaces for businesses to move in. Make sure they have enough electricity to run their business, enough utilities, and proper code compliance. And I'm going to just read these because I think that they're important to know what we're trying to achieve by doing this. We want to improve our commercial buildings to encourage growth and reduce the number of vacancies in storefronts and upper floors. We want to enhance the appearance of our neighborhoods and commercial areas. We want to strengthen local business, rehabilitate or restore the original character of historic buildings, provide a catalyst for others to improve their buildings and storefronts, and then encourage private investment in commercial properties. You heard Mr. Capoletti talk at the beginning of the meeting. You need a couple of people. Once one building starts to get improved, their neighbors want to improve it. It's a catalyst for that kind of development. And, you know, especially these businesses have struggled through the pandemic. So this grant will really help them improve their business, bring business back, grow what they can, and be able to afford to do that. This grant application is going to be open to owners of commercial structures, existing tenants in commercial structures, as long as they have the owner's permission, and as well as nonprofit organizations, but provided that they provide the economic development that meet our revitalization goals. And again, that's just reiterating that this is meant to drive economic growth, attract business, and really part of our economic gardening model that we've been working on over the past several years. Building Healthier Communities allocated $150,000 to this grant. So it's not a huge amount of money, but I think it's enough to start to spur some of that redevelopment. It's a reimbursable grant, so if somebody has to come to us, we'll approve the application, city council will approve the application. And once it's done and paid, we reimburse 75% of the first 25,000, 25% for the remaining 25,000 of funds expended. I think most of these projects will be under that $25,000 mark, but we do want to give a little incentive for some bigger projects to happen, which is why we have that split rate. And so what we need, what our next steps are, is I wanted to make sure that the council had time to review the project description and the proposal, make sure that there was no other comments or suggestions into things that we should include or not include. City council will appoint the small city subcommittee to help review these applications, make sure that they're complete and make recommendations to council for review. And then we're going to go ahead and launch the program and see who submits applications. And you can just kind of answer any questions you had or.
Floor is open for questions.
I just want you to know that I forwarded some information to a certain friend of mine who has some property on Main Street, and he was very intrigued. So I'm glad to see a facade program coming back, and I remember it was successful the first time. Yes. Thank you, Rista.
We had 40 applicants with the last facade improvement program. So,
yeah. And I know that, and I can just tell you fairly anecdotally, but I get calls and emails from a lot of people, not just downtown. This is open. Our priority is the gateways, but it's not just downtown. It's open to anybody, any commercial property in the city. And there's a lot of interest in a lot of people who want to do this and have been reaching out. I think that this will be a successful grant round as well.
Thank you, Rista. Other questions for Rista? Hearing none, we'll move into item 7. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the Torrington Facade and Building Improvement Program to be funded through the Building Healthy Communities Grant Program.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ruette, seconded by Councilwoman Wagner. Questions on the motion?
Well, I recognize that this doesn't just happen. So Rista, thank you for your work to get this allocation to our local businesses. So appreciate your work. Thank you.
All right, I'll call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, stay where you are, Rista. You're up again. Economic Development Report.
My last report was in January. So this is about 6 months worth of work, and you can tell there's a lot of things happening. So I'm not going to go through everything, but we do have new businesses opening, even through the pandemic, which is great to see. Our businesses are making a comeback. We did just receive another brownfield grant for 100 Franklin Street to work with the NIDAC. One of the great things about this property is they're the owners, they're the responsible party. City doesn't have to get involved in cleanup, but we do want to make sure that we get a great project down there. We want to make sure we're attracting the kind of development that we want to see as a city that's consistent with all of our planning efforts. So the $200,000 that we received will help solicit and find an end user, help with some of those soft costs, and then help guide their final site redevelopment once we know what the final site plan looks like. And to make sure that it does get cleaned up and with the eye for redevelopment. Very shortly, you will see a series of promotional videos coming out. We did do 2 days of filming. We have a couple hours left of some footage that they want to make sure that we get. We're going to do a series of 4 to 6 videos. We're not going to launch them all at once. We're going to break them up. The first 3 that we focused on, arts and culture, family friendly, get outdoors. And within those 3 kind of themes, we're going to be adding businesses that they can visit and things for them to do and ways to attract them here. But throughout the whole video and all of our promotional things that we're doing, we're drawing people to our It's Happening Here website, which has all of our businesses on there. And that page is continuing to grow. We had an intern that's helping to create some more information that's going to go on there. All of our businesses are located. All of our places and events are there. And the more that it's promoted, the more that it's used, the more the businesses invest in it, the more information and more valuable it will be. So between those those promotional videos and putting people to the It's Happening Here website, I think will really give the needed support that's needed at this time. One of the things that I also just wanted to touch on quickly is we've recently sent out postcards to the new residents who have moved to town. We created a survey to find out why they moved here, what attracts them, what are some of their concerns, to kind of make sure that we're targeting our efforts in the right place and getting feedback from them. Anybody can take the survey, but it was kind of geared towards why are people moving here? What's attracting them here? And as part of that, we've also updated our live page of our Torrington CT website so that any information that you might need, where your churches are, how to pay your taxes, how to register your dogs, where your bus stops are, it's one location, and there's just links to the different pages that you would need to find. You don't have to search everywhere for that. Those were kind of just some of the highlights that I wanted to go over, but if there was any, and I just do want to mention too, this was really a big effort from Sergeant Baldus, but we did launch Park Mobile, which is an app, a pay by app. And I think that is, I've already heard a lot of positive feedback from the users and from our businesses downtown, that this is so much easier for people. They just scan it with their phone. If their time runs out while they're in a restaurant, they can add more time right from their phone. So that is a big effort. It just went live this week, and we've already seen quite a bit of use on it, so that we're pretty excited for that. I don't know if there's any other questions on anything in the report I can elaborate or answer for you. I'm happy to do so.
Just, I love what you're doing, and I think you're connecting with Discover Litchfield Hills as well. Won't you have that It's Happening Here as a link for Torrington to be part, so that we have that bigger audience for events and our local business?
So the Discover Litchfield Hills page has places, events, and stories. And because the It's Happening Here page is on the same platform as Discover Litchfield Hills, and part of our subscription to Civic Plus is they manage the places, events, and stories page. So those will all be the same. So as people add things to Discover Litchfield Hills, it'll be on It's Happening Here. They add them to It's Happening Here, it will go on Discover Litchfield Hills. But other than those three links, which are, it's a big part of the website, all the other content is ours to create and add what we want, and make sure that our Torrington businesses get highlighted and we get the information we want out there. So I think there's definitely a separation between the two, but a lot of the information does talk and is promoted.
Right, and I appreciate that. I was just thinking, I thought that other communities were having just a link to their city website that was part of that, but maybe I misunderstood that.
Yeah, we could link to Discover Litchfield Hills, but because we have our own website, we don't need to. The information just kind of shares and talks between the two websites.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
And just, I know in your report, you had indicated, the adult use marijuana and what that's going to mean on the municipality. I'm sure it probably will be something the ordinance committee, which I hope Frank is still here.
Just give me the time to talk at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, we'll give you an update.
So
We'll give you an update.
I have not, heard anything more about that, but I do think, unfortunately, I think the law poses a lot of risk for the ordinance committee and the local municipalities in terms of, making some of these things. So I've not been supportive of the law, but now we have to live with it as a municipality, and I'm sure we probably will be talking more about it.
Yes.
I sure will.
Yeah.
All right. So excited. But thank you. I actually appreciate the report.
So moving on, item number 9, I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the Public Works Director and Purchasing Agent to waive the city's bid process and accept the state, regional, and national bids for city projects and materials for the contracts referenced in the Public Works Director's memo dated July 29, 2021.
So
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner,
Second.
and seconded by Councilman Waldron. Are there questions on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 10, I'll entertain a motion to accept Corporation Council's recommendation and authorize the mayor pursuant to CGS Section 12-179 to release the liens described in Attorney Michelle's memo dated August 2nd, 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Waldron.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Wagner. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 11, I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendation of the tax collector and authorize the tax refunds indicated unless dated August 2nd, 2021.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ruette, seconded by Councilman Rubino. Questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 12, I'll entertain a motion acting herein as a city council, acting herein as a WPCA to accept the recommendation of the tax collector and authorize the sewer use refunds indicated unless dated August 2nd, 2021.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ruette, seconded by Councilwoman Wagner. Questions on the motion or the list? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll entertain a motion to accept the building department reports for the months of May and June of 2021.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Waldron, seconded by Councilwoman Wagner. Questions on the reports? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 14, I'll entertain a motion to consider business by department heads.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ruette, seconded by Councilman Rubino. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I see Treasurer Farley is here. He's in the house. Nothing this evening? Do we have anybody on the call still? So, Ray, did you have anything to add this evening?
I have nothing additional, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. For Mr. Mayor, is anything this evening, Bill?
I do not. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And that's it. All right, we'll move on to item 15. I'll entertain. Oh,
Nothing, Miller.
Corporation Council. Actually, well,
You were there.
yeah.
I'm here for you.
And my city clerk's office too. So, okay, good. No, thank you. Item 15, I will entertain a motion to consider business by mayor and members.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Wagner, seconded by Councilman Rubino. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Starting to my right. Anything this evening, Councilman Waldron?
Yeah, I'll just make one final comment on Waters Way. I mean, this is one of the worst blighted properties in town, and we're going to finally do something with it.
Yeah.
It's not like we have investors beating down the doors here, all right? So what do we got to lose here? All right, yeah, there'll be some impact on the town, but that's the way things are. Does anybody remember Jed Hayes?
Yes.
Yeah. What was that, 25 years ago? What happened to that project? It came and went.
Correct.
So this, we got to grab this.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. Councilwoman Wagner.
I'm not disputing the Waterway project at all. I think we need to do something with that property. I just was thinking time. The only other question is, and Drake mentioned it tonight, we were almost ready to wear masks tonight. Are we getting any update on the status of Litchfield County compared to the rest of the state?
So we do monitor those numbers on a daily basis. I will be meeting with our executive policy under the joint information sharing incident command structure that was assembled when we first started responding to the pandemic. That meeting is tomorrow. That includes the Board of Education. It includes Torrington Area Health District, Charlotte Hungerford Hospital, Community Health and Wellness. We will be going through not only the numbers as they are local, but what are we seeing and experiencing out there in public. And from there, we'll be issuing our next round of orders.
Thank you.
Sure. Councilman Rubino.
The ordinance committee will be meeting August 16th at 6 o'clock. I'll be putting together an agenda.
Take it, that's
Right now, the mayor can explain a little bit more if she wants to, but yes, it will be dealing with the new marijuana laws and 100 pages of it. And we'll be dealing with other ordinances that we feel appropriate. I want to thank Sergeant Baldus, the chief, Greg Mealy, for attending a little get together to organize this. And I think it's well thought out. So we'll be getting some more information, the rest of the council. And we'll be bringing it towards hearings and everything. So worked well on that. I do want to, for the record, convey our condolences to Paul Carbonaro for the loss of his mother and their family. We all know how that is, and I'm sure I want to thank Paul for coming tonight. And that's about it. Oh, this weekend was great. I didn't have a chance Friday to come down, but from what I heard from everybody, it was a great success. Saturday, I was here during the day and again at the evening when we ate. So, and it was still going. So, I mean, it was great. It was a good thing, and the kids all loved it. Everything worked well. It was going around the areas, walking around. We went to stores around the area. They were open to see them. So that was nice to get in to see the vendors also. And it was a positive weekend. I want to thank Pal. They did a great job.
They did. Councilwoman Ruette.
I think I've said enough tonight.
Yeah. So I'll just quick. I'm always sensitive to the comments on road construction. Just as a reminder to the council, back in 2018, when the voters approved a $40 million bonding package, which would afford us an opportunity to do more road work. Just as a reminder, as part of our sales pitch to get that referendum question passed, we went back 30 years and learned that there was never any more than 2 to 3 miles of road work happening every year. Since, in the last 2 years, since the passage of that bonding package, we have completed 24 miles of new roads. I think that there's a lot of misperception or it's if you don't see it, you don't know that it's happening kind of thing that happens. And what you see that isn't happening seems very obvious. State roads, we have a lot of state roads. A lot of the roads that are in bad condition are state roads, particularly East Main Street. I'm thinking Mr. Budis was complaining about that one raised structure, which I'm always afraid I'm going to pierce my tire on. I have learned that DOT will be doing that road work. If you pay attention, the catch basins have already been lifted, and so that road work will be happening between now and the fall. I heard a question on the sidewalk construction on East Main Street. That is a $2 million grant. That is, we are working diligently. There has been a lot of back and forth with DOT. Sidewalks on a state road, especially a state road with 4 lanes and a lot of private properties, is exceedingly complicated. And I have to give credit to our engineering department. They have been doing yeoman's work. They send the revised plans to DOT. Their engineers review, revise, send it back to us. And these plans have been going back and forth for almost 2 years. But the latest revisions did go out to DOT this morning, and my fingers are crossed that any of the questions that DOT has remaining, particularly as it relates to any of the encroachments of those private properties and the signage on those private properties, can be addressed and clarified so that we can actually get a project authorization letter. Along those lines, the state of Connecticut did provide us with a project authorization letter approving Prospect Street construction. We are really excited to see that project finally get released from DOT's review. Again, a project that goes back and forth in the design phases with DOT. Another 2 years back and forth. You know, They want to see this kind of a reveal. They're worried about this intersection. So we're good to go on that project. However, we're getting near the end of road construction. So I do believe that that's a project that will probably go out to bid this fall for construction in the spring. As you heard Councilman Rubino allude to, I did call a meeting of Councilman Rubino, the Planning and Zoning Board Chairman, Marty Connor, Sergeant, Sergeant, that's all right.
I'm gonna get denied something.
No, yeah, really, yeah, good luck. We had Sergeant Baldus and Chief Baldwin in the office. That was last week to discuss the significant impact that this marijuana legislation has. Obviously, the immediate concern in the police department is what public spaces we need to protect and preserve from open use of marijuana. So that, I think, is the ordinance that Councilman Rubino will be working on with the committee and then for advancement. However, the more convoluted, complicated piece about zoning for retail and for for micro growing facilities, we think it's prudent for us, based on the meeting that we had, to take our time with this. It isn't something that needs to be done immediately. The state has only recently established its social equity board. It will be a year before any of those permitting guidelines and documents come forward. So we believe it's in the best interest of the city to also wait and see what happens elsewhere in the state, what other impact may happen as a result of municipalities approving those uses or not approving those uses. So more information will come, as you heard from Councilman Rubino on that. And did I miss anything? Oh, I heard the car license plates. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, another, ordinance committee is going to be pretty busy for the next couple of months anyways. Yeah, so there are, Sergeant Baldus has some ideas on license plate readers and license plate strategies so that we can capture those vehicles. DMV did have a moratorium on renewals and stuff like that, but that has been lifted, and now we're looking at ways to enforce and make sure that those vehicles are registered where the resident lives and the taxes are being collected. So I think that covers my notes. And if there are no other comments or questions from the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ruette, Councilwoman Wagner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
Everybody's on the right.
You want to say something about the
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be leaving.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. It's just that he's leaving. He's been here 3 years. Good guy.
Great guy.
Great guy.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate your saying that.